uh, o te pō nei, ka karakia tātou kia tīmata. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou i te hui nei, aroha atu, aroha mai tātou i a tātou katoa. Kei te mihi tuatai ki a koutou, ki ngā mana whenua o tēnā rohe o tēnā rohe, ki ngā kai kōrero o te hui nei, ara kia koutou katoa kua hui hui mai nei I tēnei pō a tēnā tātou. No Kōtarana, no Ingarangi o Kutupuna, ko te papa iwi a te whenua tipu, he tangata tiriti, he Pākehā ahau, called Grace Newton tōku ingoa. So I'm Grace, I'm the Campaigns Manager at Action Station, and a very warm welcome to you for turning out tonight on a Monday evening to talk about the privatisation in the banking sector. Not a lot of people do that on a Monday night, but you're here doing it. So welcome. So this webinar is hosted by Action Station. We're a people-powered campaigning organisation focusing on three main PO, economic, climate and te tiriti justice. We also help people start their own campaigns via our platform, our Action Station. And we support all sorts of causes, local and national campaigns and groups working toward a fair and flourishing Aotearoa. So Action Station is hosting this webinar tonight because we believe that neoliberal policies, so policies that shrink our public services and deregulate the market, work to hurt people and our planet in order for corporations and private interests to profit from the basics of life in our society, from food to housing to energy to banking. We believe in an economic system that puts people and papatūānuku over profits. And on this year, the 40th anniversary of neoliberalism in Aotearoa, we believe it's high time for a change of course towards a just and flourishing future. So that will require big change, but people built our systems and it'll be us, the people, that change them. And this starts with conscientization. So this webinar is about just that, learning and knowing so that we can act. So with that, a little bit about the evening. You'll hear from 4 speakers tonight and I'll introduce them as we go along, and they're going to take us through what's happening with Kiwibank, what the proposed changes would mean, the broader context of privatisation and what we can do about it. And just a note on timing, we are keeping it short tonight. And this is part of something new we're trying out, which is sort of like reacting to issues that seem to be important for our membership at Action Station, and align with our core PO. So acting fast on those issues and trying to bring people good information and sort of, a bit faster than a regular campaign would work. So, that's why we've kind of rolled this out really quickly, and hundreds of people have responded and are online tonight listening. So that's amazing. But yeah, it sort of means like, we don't want to rope people into an hour and a half. We want to give people the information kind of like efficiently. So we will be wrapped by 8:30, if not sooner. And that does mean that we've got a little less time for things like questions. So it's likely we won't have a question segment after this webinar, but I do really want to encourage people. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom. And I do really want to encourage you, if there's something that's not quite clear or something that you want to hear more about that comes up, please ask the question in the Q&A section, and we can actually go over that over the next couple of days and send out, we could do a response or an FAQ in the email that'll come in the coming days with the recording of the webinar. So yeah, so go ahead and use the Q&A function. We just might not get to it tonight. And lastly, if you have to leave early, this is being recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. And we'll mail that to people in the next couple of days. But I reckon just stick around, because who goes back and watches over old YouTube videos? I know I've got like a backlog that I haven't got to. So yeah, stick around. Okay, I reckon it's time to get into our first kai kōrero. We're going to hear from Max Harris first. Max is an Action Station campaigner and lawyer, and he's going to start off by just setting the scene about what's happened so far. So take it away, Max.
Kia ora, Grace. Kia ora koutou. Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Max Harris tōku ingoa. He Pākehā ahau, he tangata tiriti ahau. My name is Max. I'm Pākehā. I'm in this country because of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, regardless of any government's attempts to change the status of that document. And tonight, yeah, we're going to talk about Kiwibank and the government's preparing the ground to privatize Kiwibank. So what the government has done is talked about opening up Kiwibank to more capital. But we have to cut through that language, and to cut through that language, we have to understand what's really going on. And hopefully I'll help get us started by just talking about three things in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Number one, the history. Quite a lot about the 80s and 90s and the privatization that happened then. Number two, just a bit about privatization and public ownership in general. And then number three, about why this attempt to privatize Kiwibank has to be opposed and how we can build a positive movement out of it. So I'll try and go through as quickly as possible, but hopefully as clearly as possible as well. As many of you on this call will know better than me, we had a different economic system in this country from the 800 to 1,000 years ago, from when Māori were first here, a system based on collective values and including collective provision of resources. But colonization imposed a different economic and political system on this country, a system that we can call capitalism, a social order that is based on private property, and that involves the extraction of profit through the exploitation of workers. And then within that system, since the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in 1840, there's been a struggle between a more mixed economy where the state has tried to control the forces of extraction and exploitation, and then more intensely capitalist periods. And I'm not going to go through all of that history, but just to say that if we fast forward into the 1980s, what Grace mentioned, the neoliberal period beginning, in the 1980s and the 1990s, we had a more intense capitalist direction that was taken, and privatization was a big part of that. What do we mean by privatization? Simply a publicly owned resource being sold to someone that is not the state. So railways being sold off, banks being sold off, and I'll come back to a few more specific examples. But what I wanted to say about the 80s was that it really deeply entrenched a wave of privatization. So in the year that I was born, in 1988, there was a particularly big fire sale of $2 billion worth of public assets. And over that period, which we sometimes talk about as Rogernomics, going into the 1990s, the New Zealand government sold off the railways, the airports, the forests, and a number of other things, including a national economic development bank that we had and a Ministry of Works that was building infrastructure. This enriched a very small number of people, selling off these assets to a small number of people. For example, a particularly aptly named investment banker, David Richwhite, whose investment bank, Fay Richwhite, organized and often benefited from the sale of BNZ, Telecom, and a number of other assets. At the same time, it meant that there was a loss of control. And I wanted to talk now, having just gone quickly through the history, into kind of privatization and public ownership more generally. And what I'd say is since the 80s and 90s, we've had an ongoing creep of privatization, but it's probably happened a little bit more quietly through infrastructure, through the local government level, which I know Nico's going to talk a little bit more about, and without the same heated opposition. And I think part of what we want to do tonight is to say we do need to build up that opposition again, given what we've lost and what we stand to lose, and given what we can regain by fighting together. So just on public ownership and privatization more generally, I've already said what privatization is. So when the government has an asset or a resource and it sells it off to a private individual, why is privatization in general a social and economic failure? Well, like I've said with the Richwhite example, it tends to enrich a very small number of people, including consultants that are brought on board to advise on a transaction. That often has increased inequality in moments where there have been waves of privatization. It also means you're hardwiring the system in a different way in how it delivers a service. So it hardwires the system so that profit trumps and people suffer. And let me give you a concrete example of that. So local public transport services have been privatized in recent decades in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And one example of what's happened in one place where local public transport was privatized is that the first thing to go was the support services for disabled people traveling on public transport. Because when the dominant motive becomes profit and not people, you're more likely to squeeze out anything that is not going to serve a profit and anything that is in there to support people. The workers lose out. We've seen that in many countries where services have been privatized. In the UK, they sold off their railways, and there have been waves of rail strikes because of the way privatized rail screwed down wages and terms and conditions. And as a public, we also lose control and accountability. And it's hard to ever get those services back in public ownership, because the reality is it's harder for the government to buy back services or to nationalize services than it is to sell them off. Services have tended to get worse in many countries where privatization has happened. In the UK, they also sold off their water systems, and there are massive sewage problems because of private water companies making a mess of the water system. And maybe this is the key point. The values of a society also change, because when you privatize something, you make a society more market-driven. And when you make a society more market-driven, it becomes more bound up in market values, more individualistic, more separated, and that changes the fabric of society. And it doesn't even work economically. So privatization has not been a game changer for productivity in New Zealand. And just briefly, why is public ownership important? It allows the public interest to take priority. So it's the opposite of what I was saying before on like profit trumping and the people suffering. And we see that, for example, with something like a library, your community library, which you go to, and it being publicly owned and being open and accessible. Public sector also actually is cheaper for borrowing, and when the public sector invests and makes money from a service, that money goes directly back into the service rather than going to shareholders, because a privatized company has to pay its shareholders, and so money leaks out. There's lots of other reasons, like being able to coordinate and being able to benefit from economies of scale. Of course, in New Zealand, public ownership needs to be thought about differently, including in terms of Te Tiriti or Waitangi, but those are some general reasons why we should be skeptical always of privatization and why we should think favorably about public ownership. Lastly, just on Kiwibank. The other speaker is going to talk a bit more about it, but basically the government is saying that this is solving the problem of having 4 big Australian banks that need to be challenged. And the government is saying because Kiwibank can open itself up to more capital, that when it has more capital, capital acts as kind of like an insurance for a bank. And what the government is saying is that banks will be able to lend more, the Kiwibank will be able to lend more, and that it will be able to compete with Australian banks. Lots of problems with this. In particular, at the moment, the gap between Kiwibank and those Australian banks is pretty massive. So Kiwibank has about $3 billion in capital. The smallest Australian bank has 10 billion. So you're not going to bridge that gap so easily. And it's not really clear what the government is saying when it says they want Kiwibank to be a disruptor. But more importantly, it's inconsistent with why Kiwibank was first set up about 20 years ago. It was set up to keep profits in New Zealand from banking, to have a bank that was not profit maximizing, but that made a profit, but that could act in the public interest, that could reduce fees. And it succeeded in doing that, as many acknowledged in the mid-2000s. If it is privatized, if it's opened up to some capital, there'll be less Crown control. There'll be a small shareholding initially that's held by something else. It'll be harder to do things in the public interest in a coherent way, and it also opens the door to further privatizations, and that's why we have to oppose it. And it's not popular, which is why this government has already said it's just kind of putting its toe in the water, and that it will probably take this to the next election, because it knows it has to create a sense of crisis, as was done in the 80s, to suggest there's no alternative, to try and justify a privatization that would otherwise be very unpopular. What I wish we were doing now is thinking more positively about more things that could be brought into public ownership, like our ambulances, which are not in public ownership, like some of our state-owned enterprises, which are in this weird halfway house, like local public transport that I've mentioned. And I do think that one positive in this moment, in the same way as this government has galvanized people around Te Tiriti or Waitangi, is that we could galvanize around a new movement against privatization, and a new movement for public ownership, and for a different kind of society that is not so individualized or greedy or separated, but that believes in communal values and that believes in the public interest. I'll leave it there, but thanks so much for turning up tonight, and thanks so much for listening, and I'll leave others to talk about the action that you can all take.
Kia ora for that, Max. And thank you for giving such a clear analysis of this kaupapa as you do with many issues across our movements. So really appreciate your work, Ihoa, and thank you for that kōrero. I'm next going to pass over to Nico Winera. Nico is a Wellington City Councillor and is going to give us a bit of a local context to the question of privatisation. So welcome, Nico.
Thanks for that. Nei rata mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia ora everybody, my name is Nico Winera. I'm from Ngāti Tōrangatira, based in Wellington. I'm a Wellington City Councillor, among other things. I'm an amateur anthropologist, I'm a composer, and I'm a soldier in the New Zealand Army Reserve. What I want to touch on in my kōrero tonight is around the way that privatisation is presented not only to the public, but also to decision makers. And I'm really pleased that our awesome previous speaker ended where he did, because that idea of a crisis and privatisation always coming with urgency is something that I really want to explore in my kōrero tonight. So firstly, a bit of background. This is my first term on the Wellington City Council. It's my first experience in local government. Before this, I came from a pretty storied and diverse, winding, some might say, career. And I've had a lot of quite different life experiences, including living overseas in Vienna for some time. And I am still getting my head around the unique flavor of neoliberal capitalism, which is the dominant mode of economic production and distribution in this country at the moment. In my almost 2 years as a local decision maker, by far the most difficult circumstance that I have come up with is the privatization of the council's controlling shares, minority controlling shares, in Wellington International Airport. So those of you who have lived in Wellington or know Wellington well know that coming into that airport is pretty shaky. It's a short little runway, and you know that Raukawa wind really shakes your plane about as you come in. But the airport itself is a really beautiful, welcoming space. It has a whole bunch to do with the identity of Wellington, and it is crucial in that kind of welcoming to Wellington and the connection to the rest of our city. It's controlled 1/3 by Wellington City Council. Back in the day, it was controlled 2/3 by the New Zealand government. However, the Crown sold up under Jenny Shipley in 1998, I believe, in a deal which torpedoed that coalition between National and New Zealand First. Winston Peters famously walked out of the government over the privatisation of Wellington Airport, so we can actually throw old Winnie a bone there and thank him for his service. But what I think it presents is this kind of coalition sinking reputation of Wellington Airport, and I think it's right that it has that reputation because it's a very knotty issue. So how did the sale come about? Well, the first thing that is necessary to say is that it's not the first time that privatisation of this particular public asset has been proposed. And in fact, Wellington City Council has a history of privatising assets. We were, to some extent, obliged by the government to privatise Capital Power, which was our electricity company back in the day. We sold it to a foreign buyer, and almost overnight, they, I think, sextupled their investment and sold it for hundreds of millions of dollars to a different foreign buyer. And it is now controlled, I believe, by a private equity firm based in Hong Kong. So Wellington's first experiment in privatisation, I think it's pretty fair to say, did not go well. The transformer at the end of my street sparks and sizzles whenever there's a rainstorm, and whenever I call them up, they say, it's all right, it's supposed to do that. So I think it's pretty fair to say that we're not doing great in our track record. The Wellington Airport, in particular, since the Crown has sold up, has been owned 2/3 by Infratil, which is a private infrastructure investment company who is currently making a killing from a bunch of New Zealand assets which were previously in state ownership, Wellington Airport included. So the way it came to us, noting that it had come to two previous councils, and it had been shot down both times, and interesting to note, it had been presented with different justifications both times. The justification which we received was that Wellington City Council is underinsured by, depending on how you measure it, $2.5 to $3 billion in terms of our asset portfolio. This is true. And that the only way to address this issue is by selling the airport. Now, that is a pretty severe crisis. You know, if I was sitting in the Beehive and my capital Citi was $2 to $3 billion worth of being uninsured, I would consider that a national problem. And I would not oblige a council to solve it with the very limited funding mechanisms we have available. Nevertheless, the shares in Wellington City's airport are the greatest asset that we currently possess in terms of book value. They're sort of valued between kind of anywhere between $350 to $500 million, depending on the market and who you ask. And it was presented to us that by selling them, we could create an investment fund, which we could invest in environmental, social, and governance investments, stocks, shares, etc., which would result in a greater return than the Wellington Airport is currently giving us, which currently sits around 10%, which is pretty good, especially a lot better than many ESG, as they're called, funds. And in exchange, that we could slowly build up our self-insurance coverage over time. You know, if the London insurance fat cats weren't going to insure us, fantastic, would insure ourselves. Now, some pretty simple mathematics proves why this is sort of a fallacy. We can, at best, insure 450 mil. That's best case scenario, excluding broker fees and, you know, whatever price we actually get for the shares. And in exchange, we are still $2 billion underinsured. So it is a problem which, let's be clear, is utterly beyond our ability to solve. And the sale of the Wellington Airport and our shares in the Wellington Airport is a very tiny drop in that bucket. So this reinforces that idea that it is sold to decision makers as a crisis. And I will admit it was effective. You know, as a relatively inexperienced city councillor and as a younger man who didn't live through the privatizations of the 1980s, I was pretty stressed. I was quite worried. Our city was billions of dollars underinsured. Surely something had to be done. Well, something does have to be done. But something that does not have to be done is a unilateral privatization which solves at best a sixth or a fifth of the problem. So this crisis, which is presented to us, always comes to decision makers, and it is always presented with the solution of privatization. And it is always presented as if privatization is the only option. That is the key thing I want you to take away from tonight. They will tell you that privatization is the only option. That is almost never true. The funny thing about this is that they're almost right. If we are looking at things through the economic logic of neoliberalism, then yes, that is right. You know, things that aren't, quote, performing financially or not a strategic investment or not efficient, that's a good one, or maybe the need to diversify our portfolio, or, you know, what they're currently saying about KiwiBank. All of those rationales, all of those motivations only work if we accept the fundamental economic value system that is neoliberal capitalism. And this is a choice that we make. We choose in this country to accept the hegemonic neoliberal logic of unlimited material growth, of alienation, of supremacy of the market, of individualization. And because of this, we make choices based on that logic, and it leads to results which we've been seeing for the past 40 years of poorer delivery of public service, of less joined up planning, of unnecessary redundancies in service delivery, of poorer results for workers. You know, one of the big initiatives that we were working on when I came into Wellington City Council was the ensuring that airport employees get a living wage, for example. I can absolutely guarantee you that if Wellington City Council does privatize the Wellington Airport, no one in that airport is going to be getting a living wage. This is the purpose of public ownership of commercial enterprises. Because you have the insurance of the tax base, you can do things that are not necessarily the most efficient commercial option in the pursuit of better social outcomes. You can do things like pay your workers a little bit more than you absolutely have to, because we know that that is good for people's well-being. You can do things like invite disabled people more accessibly onto public transport, because we know that even though they are a very small proportion of the fees-paying population, we know that it is morally right to create spaces which are accessible to disabled people. So public ownership exists to safeguard people against the cruelty of the market. And public ownership of commercial enterprises exists so that these commercial enterprises can not only pursue profit at all costs and the generation of profit for shareholders, but can also pursue social outcomes and the well-being of people. And these are things that we have been doing and hopefully, fingers crossed, will continue to be doing at Wellington Airport if we can manage to stop the privatization of the asset. So key points that I want you to take away from this corridor is it always comes with a crisis. They always say there's not a choice, and it always results in poorer social outcomes for the people of Aotearoa and indeed the world. Kia ora.
Solid. Kia ora for that, Ehua. Yeah, thanks for giving a local context to this national and very much international issue. And breaking it down for people. I will say, if you're in Wellington and that talk resonated with you, feel free to email the mayor or your councillor and encourage them to do the right thing and maybe hit some of those points that Nico alluded to there. You'll just chuck in a little sub-campaign into the proper campaign call. And now on to Ed, who's going to take us through. Okay, I'm going to warn you, there are going to be graphs, but they're pretty graphs. So just like bear with Ed, yeah, while he runs us through some of the nitty gritty of the Kiwibank specific kaupapa now. So take it away, Ed. Oh, actually, what I should say what you do for your job, eh?
You want?
Ed is a researcher at the Centre for Corporate Responsibility and Research. And Ed is a good friend of Action Station. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Kia ora. Thank you so much to Action Station for hosting this. It's a great opportunity. And thanks for everyone for joining us at such short notice on what's such an important issue. It's so fantastic to see so many people willing to give up their Monday night for a discussion about banking of all things. So thanks heaps. This discussion, I think, was sparked by maybe a week or so ago. The Commerce Commission released its market study on the banking sector in New Zealand. The key recommendation that had come out of that Commerce Commission market study, which is quite a good study, I'll get into some of the context of it in a moment, is that they want Kiwibank to become a disruptive force within the banking sector. And they say that for Kiwibank to be a disruptive force, that it needs to be better capitalized to be able to play that role. So to have more money to be able to play around with so that it can more effectively compete in that space. Nicola Willis has responded, the Minister of Finance has responded by effectively using this as an opportunity to prepare the ground for a share sale as the best approach to try and capitalize it. So there's other ways to capitalize it. It could be directly capitalized by the government, but the government has tried to use this as an opportunity to move towards its kind of ideal situation anyway, that we would have a privatization take place. My argument, which I've laid out in an op-ed that was published in the Spin-Off today, which I'll just chuck in the chat, a link to it in the chat right now, is that KiwiSaver actually can't play that disruptor role effectively if we sell off the shares to private owners, because private owners are fundamentally interested in generating the maximum returns for themselves. And for KiwiSaver to really compete against the big four banks that are primarily focused on profit, they need to reduce their margins and reduce their profitability so they're giving consumers a better deal, and so that they're forcing the other banks to compete and give consumers a better deal at the same time. But before I get into talking about KiwiSaver in too much detail, I wanted to talk about a different crisis that we're seeing unfold. We're seeing the results of this crisis unfolding right now, and that's the crisis that we're seeing in the electricity sector, where prices are surging through the roof, and it's now starting to cost jobs because large employers in the manufacturing sector are starting to close shop, or they're at least consulting on potential closures. And there will be more of these announced in the coming months. And we've actually seen just this very afternoon that that crisis is now being weaponized by the government, who've announced that they're lifting the 2018 oil and gas ban as a response to that. So that every time there is a crisis, it is weaponized for other changes to take place. The seeds for this crisis were planted about a decade ago when the government moved to partially privatize the 3 electricity companies that it still had 100% ownership in, Meridian, Mercury, and Genesis. As a result of the privatization of those, the partial privatization, they sold 49% of the shares, and the language used at that time was all about mum and dad investors. Mum and dads were going to do well out of this. We could get into that. I think there's not much time to talk about the mum and dads that have done really well, but they work for Goldman Sachs, most of them. I'm going to share a graph with you that gives you a picture of what has happened with the money that has been taken from those companies as a result of partial privatization. So I think you can see this graph here. There's 2 lines that I want you to look at. There's an orange line, and a blue line. The orange line is investment in new generating capacity, right? And the blue line is the dividends. So dividends are paid out to shareholders from profits. Asset sales took place in 2013, and you can see that from the mere mention of the asset sales, the investment into new generating capacity began its collapse. And right after the privatization period, you saw the dividends paid out to shareholders absolutely skyrocket. Over the decades since privatization of these companies took place, these 4 big gentailers, they're called, the electricity companies, have paid out $10.8 billion in dividends to their shareholders, and there has been a 1% increase in generating capacity by the big four electricity company. In fact, right across the electricity network, 1% increase. Over the period from 2016 to 2020, the rate of dividends being distributed to shareholders was about 4 times the new investment going in to electricity, to new generating capacity. 4 times as much being paid out to shareholders as there was going in to new generating capacity. And I'll stop the sharing now. We had an absolute collapse in new generating capacity and an absolute field day for dividends. This is the exact kind of thing that's being pitched for Kiwibank. But if you fast forward to August 2024, we're starting to see the wholesale electricity prices quadrupled this month, up to $800 per megawatt hour. And we're now seeing large employers collapsing and people losing their jobs as a clear result of the electricity privatizations that happened in 2013. What's being proposed for Kiwibank is strikingly similar to what we saw in the electricity space. The government is still expected to have a majority shareholding, but it will be unable to exercise that shareholding to pursue policy objectives that are helpful for working people. So in the electricity space, that's things like rapid decarbonization of our electricity network and cheaper power prices for working people. In the banking sector, that's effectively cheaper banking services. So being able to get cheaper mortgages, cheaper home loans, or cheaper personal loans, all of that kind of thing. That brings us to the ComCom market study, the Commerce Commission's market study into banking services and the degree of competition that existed or exists in the banking sector. And I know everybody complains about their banks, right? The question is New Zealand really any different to other countries? Because everyone's being skinned ruthlessly by their banks, regardless of where you are, right? So the Commerce Commission kind of tried to look at this problem in a bit of depth. They took a sample of about 20 countries, all standard comparator countries like US, UK, Australia, Germany, France, the ones that you'd all expect them to take. And they looked at about 10 to 12 years worth of data and compared where New Zealand sat on the main measures that we use to look at the profitability of banks in New Zealand. And they found that on each of those measures, New Zealand was head and shoulders above the upper quartile, so the upper quarter of those of the countries that they sampled. And I'm just going to walk you through quickly. So this is the return on equity. This red dotted line here is the upper quartile of sample countries. New Zealand is the black line at the top there. That's one of the measures. The next is return on assets. Again, New Zealand, this black line, well above that upper quartile red dotted line. And then the final one, I think it's the most important one, and we'll come back to it, is the net interest margin. This is like the difference between the amount that banks borrow and sell money. Again, New Zealand is right up the top, substantially higher than the upper quartile. The finding from the Commerce Commission study in this part is that basically in the developed world, New Zealand has the most expensive banking sector of anywhere in the world. This only goes up to 2021. but this is the last decade of profits of the big four banks. And you can see that from 2014 to 2023, banking profits after tax have increased from $4.3 billion to $6.3 billion. Enormous amounts of money comes from working people's pockets. And we know that about 3/4 of the money that is earned by these banks after tax is sent in dividends to their offshore shareholders. This is a tax that all people in this country pay on almost every transaction that they do, especially when they're doing things like paying their mortgage or paying their personal loan or paying their landlord's mortgage. So when you just pay your rent all the time, this is an enormous tax that we all have to live through. And it's something that the trend is continuing and will continue until we do something real about this within the sector. So I'll just stop sharing for one moment. Kiwibank is not really that different to this, except it's a lot smaller, right? Kiwibank this year announced its latest profit of 202 million for 2024. It's a lot smaller than 6.4 billion, but it's a 15% increase on the previous year. And we know that Kiwibank's margins, so that's the difference between the amount that they buy money and sell money, is right. Listen, let me share one more thing. Is right in line with the margins of the big four banks. So you see that big thick blue line, that's Kiwibank. And you can this is about as long as we have data for. This is the Reserve Bank data. You can see that from 2018, they're kind of maybe at the lower end. But interestingly, Kiwibank has pushed up in the last couple of years, and just over the last couple of quarters, Kiwibank has actually been the highest margin of these 5 largest banks that we have here in Aotearoa. Which is interesting because Kiwibank has also been the bank that in the last year has grown, like in terms of the size of its mortgage book, has been growing faster than the other banks. Its mortgage book is growing 2.7 times faster than the market. People want a New Zealand-owned bank. What if having a New Zealand-owned bank was the cheapest option? This is the scenario that I think is undermined by privatization, right? Private investors want to make sure that their return meets or maybe exceeds the market return that they can get in any other place. Capitalizing Kiwibank by issuing shares and then selling them off to private investors risks us moving from the big four banks to the big five banks, where they're all pretty much the same, and there is a nominal small increase in competition, but it doesn't really change the situation substantially. If we want Kiwibank to be a real disruptive force that doesn't just meet the market, but beats the market, then it needs to have lower margins than the other banks. Lower margins would make Kiwibank more attractive to borrowers. So people would think, I'm going to take out my mortgage with Kiwibank rather than with ANZ or with BNZ or the other big four. And people would start shifting their mortgages from the big four banks to Kiwibank, which means that the big four banks are going to have to compete on margins as well. They'll have to push down their margins. This is competition. This is disruption. And at the risk of ripping off Kiwibank's slogan, this is Kiwi, right? Lower margins means better returns for better outcomes for working people, but it means lower returns for shareholders as well. And private shareholders aren't interested in lower returns. They're not going to settle for this. Only the state can settle for lower returns if it sees that lower returns meet their broader policy objectives of having a lower cost banking system, getting people into homes quickly and more easily. Think of the government capitalizing Kiwibank as capital investment into our national banking infrastructure, right? This has a cost for us, like all kinds of infrastructure, and that cost sits on the balance sheet, but it would also reduce demand for other costs that we have, right? Government subsidizes incomes through all sorts of measures, like working for families and these kind of things, and they help pay your bank's interest costs. If those interest costs are smaller, then the bill for working for families is smaller as well. Kiwibank was established in 2002 with the intention of trying to prevent profits from going offshore. Wouldn't it be better if instead of those profits going offshore or into your domestic bank, that those profits stayed in working people's pockets here in Aotearoa so we can make better decisions for our own benefit? Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ed. And yeah, I feel like it's given some real clarity to the numbers. And I'll just pop in the chat now. Ed worked on a report last year about bankflation in Aotearoa. So if you're interested in some of those figures about the profitability of the big banks in NZ and where all that money's going, you can head over to that report to get some more of the numbers. So hopefully that has given some sort of context to hang all these ideas off. And I'm going to finish by passing over to Brooke. Brooke's an anti-poverty advocate and coordinator at Action Against Poverty, fresh off the streets at an action today. That went really well. So yeah, big ups to AAAP. And I'll hand it over to you, Brooke, to give us some sort of like action-based words. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora tātou. Thank you so much for inviting us to join tonight. Just wanted to mihi to Action Station for organising this, reiterate a little bit what Ed said, and also to you, Grace, for opening us in karakia. Thank you so much. I'm Brooke Powell-Stanley. I'm tangata moana. Work at AAAP, to me, the best grassroots tangata tiriti organisation in the world. And we're here for Poverty-Free NZ. We advocate for people at work and income to ensure they get what they're meant to get. And we also campaign for legislative change, basically change the whole system. We've heard pretty much how colonial capitalism isn't working and hasn't worked. And I think because we're not real about the true intent of what it's been set up for, we kind of think like, oh yeah, this government's here to look after people. Yeah, no, it's not. So not just this government, successive governments as well. So I'm here to talk about thank you to all of our speakers tonight as well. You guys laid out a really incredible argument for keeping public assets public, and for keeping Kiwis Bank public as well, which is really important for what I'm going to speak to. An idea called Universal Services. It's actually Universal Basic Services, UBS, but we kind of switched it to US because the acronym is US. And it kind of encapsulates the idea of what it's for. It's an alternative welfare model that was first kind of floated in 2017, and then formally in 2017 by the UCL, Institute for Global Prosperity, and then it was picked up by the British Labour Party. So there you go, the New Zealand Labour Party. There's something for the next election. And I think, Max, did you work on this a little bit? Yeah, so shout out to our brother Max. He's actually worked on this with that party. So it's the idea that public services should be universal, unconditional, and free to all. And so I guess with privatization, it makes it harder for us to keep those things in under the ownership of the state, but it also means that the state can use those profits from these public services to invest back into our communities and to Papa Tōnuku. This is a really important idea, I think, also thinking about a just transition. If we're thinking about ways or models in which we can look after people through a just transition, this is a really incredible model because it ensures that public services are free. So for us at AAAP, we're all about a poverty-free NZ and making sure that our public services are free and accessible to everybody. Makes it a more equal society in which we live in. It also kind of takes the power away from money, which I think is a really important thing to think about in terms of an alternative for this colonial capitalist model. They reckon they came up with this idea in like 2018, but I reckon they riffed it from the Indigenous communities that Max was talking about earlier. Indigenous communities and their models, they were all about sharing, making sure that everything was provided for people, and more importantly, they didn't use money. So I think there are some really incredible ways from heaps of different cultures that we can kind of take to form something new and special and sorry, I was just checking the chat, sorry. New and special and unique to Aotearoa. I think I think this government with it's all kind of connected, really, what they're doing. I think they're trying to set up not just for Kiwi Bank, but looking at trying to make the soil fertile for privatizing a lot of our other public services as well. And I think that's reflective in the kind of laws and the policies that they're pushing through at the moment. So yeah, we want to make sure that we keep public assets and resources public, that the profits go back into the community, that we look at making things more free and accessible to everyone to ensure that everybody has everyone has access to the rights of their own existence, that people can be well, communities can be well. And that's kind of at the center, what Ed was speaking to, ensuring that we keep at the center of our decision-making people and papa tōnaku, especially given the climate that we're in at the moment. If we look at the political landscape across the whole world, there's lots of issues going on, fam. And so I think it's especially important right now to start thinking about alternatives to colonial capitalism. And one way, we need a whole suite of changes, but one way is ensuring that we keep public assets and public resources in public hands. So hands off Kiwi Bank fugly, stop trying to sell all our stuff like it doesn't work. It just makes rich people richer and everyone else sad and depressed. So we can find new ways to be with each other, and with papa. And I think we need to ensure that that remains the focus for the government. They should only be thinking about a just transition. They should only be thinking about constitutional transformation via Mati Mai, and they should be ensuring that keeping things in public hands stays with us, so that, as Max mentioned earlier, the issue of te tiriti, ensuring that at some point these public assets can actually be returned to iwi and hapu. So thank you so much for having me tonight, fam. That's all from me. And yeah, thanks for joining.
Way to finish us off, Brooke. Thank you very much, e te whanaunga. And thank you for the work that you do. Yeah, it's a little bit of a tired phrase, but at the coalface of the crisis that we're in right now, and with people who are feeling the impacts of this ideology which is driving privatization. So thank you for the work you do. And I think I might just end with one point about Te Tiriti o Waitangi, because I think on the issue of privatization, we are seeing a co-option of this language. And we're seeing it with groups like Hobson's Pledge and the Taxpayers Union. And we saw it through that nasty Herald ad that lots of people must have seen, which is trying to frame Māori ownership as privatization. I think we need to be really astute and active with this, so that we can make sure that we hold on to this language and we don't sort of surrender it to far right or racist actors. So rather than shy away from these conversations, I really encourage you to go out after this, out into the world, into your workplaces with your whānau and everything, and actually hit these conversations head on, because it's when we shy away from them that we start to lose the nuance and the sort of critical analysis. And we really need that in this time of where language is being sort of used against movements for collectivity, So yeah, I just thought I'd end with that to sort of wrap that conversation. And yeah, so where to next? So yeah, as promised, we're going to finish before 8:30, so we're not going to head into questions, but I do want to just head people over to the petition link I've put in the chat there. And I know people are feeling petition fatigue. There's a lot going on. It's going to be a busy few years, but it is an important action that you can take because it'll do two things. It'll keep you updated with this campaign and how things progress, and sort of more broader anti-privatisation work that we'll be doing over the next couple of years. And the other thing is it will show public kickback, and this will add to the case for getting a bit of media airtime on the public kickback to this, and sort of open up the conversation to more than just like a couple of pundits or economists, you know. So it is an important thing to do. So head over to the link now, because after the Zoom's finished, the link will be gone. But if you miss it, we'll send you an email over the next couple of days, and I'll have the link to this video that you can share with people. And yeah, I just want to thank the speakers for taking the time to prepare and deliver your kōrero tonight. You know, like, as I said, things are pretty intense at the moment, and it takes time away from other things in the evenings to do this sort of mahi. So I just really want to mihi to you all, appreciate the work that everybody does. Special shout out to Anne, who I think's actually dropped off the call, but Anne is like background webinar boss, and she really deserves her flowers. So shout out to you, Anne. And lastly, I will acknowledge all of you for attending tonight. You know, like, you could have done anything with the last sort of 55 minutes of your life, but you spent it learning about privatization in the banking sector. And, you know, it's a small step to come to stuff like this, but it's one in many small steps that we take together to move towards that future that Brooke has outlined for us. And so, like, yeah, big ups to you. You know, together we're unbeatable. So let's keep moving together. Let's keep moving with hope. And yeah, I'll finish this up with a karakia. Unuhia, ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takata. Koe ara e rongo whakairia ake ki runga kia tīna. Haumie huie, tai ki e. And good night, folks.